Welcome to the top 10 commanders of July. Today we have some bangers again, so I hope your coffee is warm, because here we go. The first one is still the same, so not really a banger there. It's Ulalek the Fused Atrocity. Well, is it a banger? I think it kind of is, because staying in the top 1 is way more impressive than being in the top 1, definitely if we're talking about new cards. So Ulalek, for example, here you see how popular he is because of doubling big spells that are already way too big, because they're Eldrazi spells. Now, usually you would say these are Timmy's, but now we are seeing a commander that has a little bit more longevity than that. Why? Well, basically just because let's see these cards. These are, for example, Hope and the Coatl that work really well with the card. It's a 3-mana Eldrazi snake. It has flash, and when you cast this spell, counter target spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1. Of course, you can double this ability. More importantly, I'd say you love to play those cards and get them back to your hand or something like that. Keep going with the countering of spells. Other than that, there is Oblivion Sower, a 6-mana Eldrazi that says when you cast this spell, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of their library, then you may put any number of land cards from exile onto the battlefield under your control. Copying that ability and the Eldrazi itself is really strong, and you kind of can keep going with this, because in this way you will have enough mana to keep playing your spells. You don't even mind the fact that those lands are colors. In this case, most of your creatures are colorless, so you don't mind any of the colors. Another example, Artisan of Kozilek, a 9-mana Eldrazi. So you will need a lot of mana in this deck. It will basically be a ramp deck. And then when you get to the Eldrazi part, you were already winning, but now you're winning even more. This card really plays into the fantasy of winning more. When you cast a spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Doesn't seem impressive. It's on an uncommon as well, but returning 2 creature cards from the graveyard to the battlefield means you get 2 big Eldrazi creatures back, destroying, annihilating, I would say, your opponents. Next up is a new one. New in the top 10 and at place 2 already. As I said, it's not as impressive to be in the top 2 for a moment, because this is a new card and people love Ezio, people love Assassin's Creed, and it's logical for fans of the game to want to build the deck. Ezio Auditore da Firenze is a 2-mana 3/2 menace human assassin that is a sort of typo commander for assassins, because he says assassin spells you cast have free running for 2 black mana, meaning you may cast the spell for 2 black mana if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or with Ezio himself, if he's your commander, of course, or because he's an assassin actually. This means that you can play really big assassins for really cheap. Another thing you could do with it is make everything an assassin. That's really a roundabout way of getting free spells basically onto the battlefield, but I think the cost reduction part is really popular, so that's one part. It's Assassin's Creed is the second part, and there are some cool combos, because the dream is to win with the last ability of Ezio. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may pay Wooburg. If the player has 10 or less life, when you do, that player loses the game. Now, there are multiple ways to do this, but one of the big splashy ways is Soren Markov, a 6-mana planeswalker that can immediately make target opponent's life total become 10. Then if you can get in with Ezio and pay Wooburg, then yes, you are winning the game. I think this is really a long shot, but I think that's also a little bit into the game with Ezio. Otherwise, it could be a finisher for a little bit more damage, but that just adds 7 damage if you're thinking about it. Well, in any case, this is the most popular assassin that we've got from Assassin's Creed, and I don't think it will be in the top 10 for very long because Bloomburrow is coming. Next up is one that stayed, but was bumped down 1 spot. The Necrobloom. It's a 4 mana plant that's basically producing 2/2 zombies for you for every land that you get onto the battlefield. I think more interestingly, land cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2, and that is a really cool ability. Let's look at some other cards than the previous ones I've shown that are really good in this deck. Well, for one, this commander is a Field of the Dead on a creature, so adding another Field of the Dead is kind of flavorful in that way, and I would say almost necessary, even though it's a really expensive card. Cards like the Kidrock monster that care about sacrificing lands, getting them into the graveyard or getting them back because you can play an additional land on each of your turns are really good in this deck. And one card that is doing multiple things is White of the Reliquary, which is a zombie. You will be perhaps wanting some zombies in your deck to play onto the theme. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, and you will be milling a lot with the Dredge ability, and you can tap it to sacrifice another creature to search your library for a land card. You love sacrificing creatures, you love searching your library for a land card and putting it onto the battlefield tap, because then you can sacrifice it again and keep the value engine rolling. Next up is a new thing, because yes, these cards have been in the top 10 for way too long, and I need to keep coming up with new things. So if you haven't noticed, every time I talk about a card that has repeated itself, I go for something different, another piece of information. For these cards that have now been in the top 10 4 months in a row, and I think there will be a lot more times that they will repeat themselves, like the Ur-Dragon, I will now make a sort of Dungeons and Dragons character. The Ur-Dragon, of course, is a really big endgame, I would say, boss to defeat. And basically, I've been thinking about it in the way that you don't really have to defeat it. I mean, it's almost impossible to defeat a dragon avatar, the strongest type of being that is around. How could you defeat this dragon? I'd say it's a lawful neutral character. It doesn't really care about evil or good. It is all colors as well, so I think that's true. It must have a lot of hit points and a great armor class. I'd say ability scores, dexterity is a little bit less, but strength and charisma must be really, really high. The intelligence as well, because it's a dragon. But charisma because it has been leading all of its dragons into battle for a long time. Great saving throws. I don't really think you can wrangle this dragon or maybe fool it. I don't think you can. And for skills, I would say a lot of perception and definitely a lot of intimidation. I don't think anyone could resist it. A lot of resistances across the board, acid, cold, fire, anything elemental basically will be resisted by this dragon, so I don't really think you are getting in. I would say the only way to get in is a slashing magical piece of damage, something like that. Immunities a lot, can't be frightened. I would say, for example, can't be poisoned, probably has a lot of poison magic in itself, can't be stunned. How would you even try to do such a thing? Must have a lot of vision, even if in the dark. Of course, speaks Draconic and is a very high threat. Now, for traits, I would say it has a couple of cool ones. I've given it multiple ones. Like Divine Presence, any creature that starts its turn within 60 feet of the Ur-Dragon must succeed on the DC 26 Wisdom throw. saving throw or be frightened for 1 minute, because this is such a big dragon. It must have regeneration. It can attack multiple times as many dragons can with its bite and claw and tail attacks. Also, any non-dragon will be frightened, but any dragon will immediately be frightened when it is around. And it will have to roll to not be taken to the side of the Ur-dragon. Also, it has it can take 5 legendary actions from the start of its turn, including a tail attack, a wing attack, or the primordial call, which costs 3 legendary actions but will summon at least 1 up to 4 adult dragons of random types. So that is a really strong one, but I think it does this because it summons a bunch of dragons. Must have a lot of, for example, storm attacks as well. So yes, no way to get through this guy. And we have a bunch in a row because here is Atraxa also 4 times in a row in the top 10. And after this there's a little bit of a weird one, but Atraxa I would say a little bit less of a challenge at 22 CR. I've called it a large celestial. Also, it is a lawful evil. It has been leading, Atraxa has been leading the faction for a long time. Must have a lot of strength with the scythe she's using, and I'd say a lot of charisma as well for being a faction. Then a lot of intimidation and athletics if you're looking at the art. That is pretty logical. A lot of resistances as well, because this is a faction and there should be almost no way to defeat one. Then she has an angelic weapon, of course, divine awareness, knows if she hears a lie, can fly, so that is one thing, can also skip provoking opportunity attacks, has a scythe, which has death touch, I would give it, because of the ability of her, meaning touching a creature within 5 feet of her makes them succeed on a DC 22 Constitution saving throw or be reduced to 0 hit points. They will die. That is one of the interesting things. Also, she can summon fraction angels and has some regional effects as well, including the necrotic influence, which should sort of copy the fraction oil. Next up is a mount. Pantlaza has also been in the top 10 for 4 times in a row. Congratulations for this mount. Pantlaza, the dinosaur leader, I would say CR 12, not as great as Atraxa, sorry, is a lawful good creature, so we have had all the lawful types basically. I think this is also basically a leader. Aren't most commanders a leader? This one I would give, for example, pack tactics, meaning Pantlaza has advantage on an attack roll against the creature if at least one of its allies is within 5 feet of the creature. It has been using flanking tactics to defeat fractions, so that is one thing. And I wanted to give it some abilities like dinosaur dominance, meaning predatory dinosaurs in the region are unnaturally aggressive and form larger packs, led by Pantlaza's influence. And I would make it empowered when it's within 60 feet near its rider, meaning it's a great mount. Okay, back to Magic the Gathering now. I think we don't have many of these, so hope you found this fun, but otherwise let me know. Edward Kenway is in for the first time in 7th place. Also a really popular Assassin's Creed character for 5 mana. It's a 5/5, so that's 1 part. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each tapped assassin, pirate and or vehicle you control. And you know what's interesting about vehicles is you can tap any creature for the crew ability. Even if it's crew 3, you could tap all of your creatures for that vehicle, meaning you get a bunch of treasures. If you can make 5 treasures, you can sacrifice them to time sieve and get another turn, meaning you basically go infinite on turns. Another way to break time sieve. That's one thing or reason why I think Edward is really popular. Also, I think pirates have been getting more and more popular. And this one says, whenever a vehicle, so wants to play with vehicles, which is a little bit unique for the pirates, you control deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of the player's library, then exile it face down. You may play it for as long as it remains exiled, and you can play them with the treasures you have been gaining. I think this is a really popular effect, stealing things from your opponents, and it is definitely a thing pirates like to do, so that is basically probably why it's so popular. Next up, for the second time in a row, has been lowered by 5 places, because I think people will look at you a little bit angry when you are playing Nadu at this moment. For Commander, is it really that toxic? Yes, a little bit, but for Standard it has been so toxic, and Brawl I think that people really hate seeing the guy. I think that's why it has been lowered 5 places. There are multiple things that make Nadu strong, of course, as you might know. One of the things is that it works really well with landfall, because his ability that triggers multiple times on each creature often lets you get a land into play immediately, meaning you get the storm off really quickly if you have multiple landfall abilities, like the one from Bristly Bill, which says landfall when a land enters landfall, put a +1 counter on target creature, meaning you target the creature, meaning Nadu triggers again, meaning you might get a land again. Scoot Swarm, also great because every creature can only be targeted twice, which is enough, believe me. But the fact that when you target a Scoot Swarm and you get a land and then you get the double the insect tokens, means that you get to trigger Nadu over and over again, more than twice. Shuko, also a great equipment in this case. Why? It has equip 0, meaning you can put this on every creature. For example, switching it around on your insect tokens means that you basically get to draw your deck if you want, probably. Or at least, draw your deck, yes. And people love drawing all of their deck. Next up is Kaalia of the Vast, a 4 mana legendary creature and human cleric. It isn't even an angel or a demon. This 4 mana 2/2 has been popular for a while, but I think this reprint with the new art has sparked interest again. Whenever she attacks an opponent, you may put an angel, demon or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that opponent. I think this was never meant to be a typo commander, but it's just really cool to play all of those big types of creatures. Angels, really big. When can you play an angel deck that's good? Well, basically almost, now maybe a little, but it's mono white, so it's never the best, but now you have some more colors to help it. Same, I think, with dragons, which have been getting way too much support. And now are strong, but usually don't get those extra colors to help it with great removal or board wipes, for example. And demons, which I guess weren't never really a good type, but now are supported by the angels and dragons. And I think playing all of those big creatures is just really fun. They also all have flying, so you still have a theme here. Next up, Omo, Queen of Vesuva, is here for the second time, basically like we see in the art. Kind of. What she does is make a land every land, or make a non-land creature every creature type. She does this for a land and a target creature if you have them, but what I've been seeing is that Omo really is most popular because of the land abilities that she has. Let's look at it. For example, Cloudpost says add 1 mana to your mana pool for each locus in play. And every land that has such a counter from Omo will become a lotus, so this becomes a really strong ability. And there are multiple types of these locus lands, so you can put multiple in your deck. Ursa's Tower also sort of has 3 of them. Ursa's Mine and Ursa's Power Plant as well. But as long as you have another land that is all land types, you will have all of those immediately and will be able to get the 3 colorless mana. And of course, something else that is really strong with Omo is anything that works with creature types. Like the Lord of the Unreal, illusions aren't really that good of a type, but Lord of the Unreal will give anything with an everything counter, a creature of course, +1/+1 and hexproof, meaning you get to protect, for example, your commander or your other precious creatures. And that was it for the top 10. I hope you enjoyed watching and I wish you a very nice day. Bye.